Hello, I'm Holly and it's a new year, so that means that it is time for some new reading goals. So in 2021 I have quite a lot of reading and booktube goals, and as part of making my goals I created this list of 21 books that I would love to get to in 2021, and I thought that I would mash my reading goals and the 21 books video into one because I think they kind of link very closely together. Some of my reading goals are directly linked to some of the books that I've picked for the 21 books I want to get to. But the first goal is obviously my Goodreads goal. How many books do I want to read in 2021? I always set that at 52 books, one book a week. I usually read a bit more. For the past couple of years I have read 100 books or over 100 books, so I think I could probably get to 100 books again, but if I don't, if I have a slower reading year, I only get to 52, I'm perfectly fine with that. And then the first goal I have is to finish 8 series. So I have a really bad habit of starting series. I must have like 30 odd series on the go at the moment, and it's getting ridiculous. I keep starting new series because I'm so hyped about all these new books that are coming out, but then those series that I'm halfway through are just staring at me and they're like, what about me? And the issue when you start so many new series and you don't continue is that by the time you get to continuing those series, you've forgotten what happens and you end up having to start from the beginning. So the first 2 books on my 21 books I want to read are actually the final books in series, and the first one is The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the 3rd and final book in the Broken Earth trilogy, and this is set in this world that is plagued by these 5th seasons, which are these apocalyptic events. Think earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, that kind of thing. And at the beginning of the first book, the 5th season, you're introduced to one of our main characters who returns home to find that her husband has killed her son and kidnapped her daughter. And while this is going on, a 5th season has just happened. This could be the worst one yet. So the world is ending around her and she goes on this journey to track her husband down, get revenge for the murder of her son and find her daughter. I have absolutely adored this series. The first 2 books were just fantastic. Both of them were 5-star reads for me, and I'm anticipating that this is also going to be a 5-star read. I don't want to get my hopes up too high because then I will be more disappointed if it isn't, but I have faith in N.K. Jemisin to just nail this ending. I love the world in this. It's so intricate, and the plotting of her novels is so intricate. There's so many different perspectives and I just love it so much. One of the perspectives is written in second person, so it's written like you did this, you did that, and it's a more outside perspective, and I know that some people struggle a bit with that, like getting to actually understand it, but for me that wasn't a major issue, and I love the reason behind having that second person perspective. The magic system in this series is earth based, so there are people who can control earth and they can make earthquakes, and because of the link between the earthquakes and these apocalyptic events, they are very oppressed and controlled. I don't want to say too much, I don't want to spoil anything, but if you haven't picked up this series yet, I would highly recommend it. I absolutely adore it and I cannot wait to get to this final book. The next final book in a trilogy is also by N.K. Jemisin. I was loving N.K. Jemisin in 2020 and I hope that I can read a lot more of her books this year, but the next book is The Kingdom of Gods by N.K. Jemisin. This is the 3rd book in the Inheritance trilogy, which is a completely separate trilogy to the Broken Earth one, and in this one, this follows, I think it's like different perspectives because the second book followed a completely different character to the first. But in the first book you're introduced to this girl called Yaini Dar. Her mother has recently died and her grandfather, who is the ruler of the 100,000 Kingdoms, ends up summoning her and saying that she is one of 3 potential heirs. And the main selling point to this series in my opinion is that there are gods, so Yaini's family actually control the gods, and there is some romance, there is a lot of god politics in this series, and this one is chunkier than the other ones. This is like a used book, so it's a little bit battered, but I don't mind that. And I have a theory about who this book is going to follow, and I loved The Broken Kingdoms, which was the second book in this series, and the ending of that, it was very, very good. I anticipate to love this one too. Gods, revenge, politics, everything that I absolutely adore is in this series. And again, if you haven't picked up this series, the first one is The 100,000 Kingdoms. I would definitely recommend giving it a try. My next main goal for 2021 is to read more classics, and I like to put numeric figures on my goals because then I can see if I'm actually completing them. So I've decided that I want to read at least 6 classics in 2021, and 4 of them that I would really like to get to are on my 21 books list. So the first one is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a very popular classic. All of these are very popular classics, but I believe that this follows this woman who has this whirlwind romance with this man, and she ends up marrying him, going back to his house where she feels very ostracized, and her husband might not be the man that she thought he was, and I think that she starts getting haunted by the ghost of his wife, like his previous wife Rebecca. I think it's very ghostly, very gothic, very atmospheric, and those are the vibes that I'm looking for. I love that kind of thing in classics. It's very well loved, this book. I know that there was a recent Netflix adaptation that I haven't watched yet. I don't know the plot of this at all, so I'm very excited to just go into it not really knowing what's gonna happen, but I have very high expectations for this one. I think that I could really enjoy it, and maybe it's like an October read. I feel like it would be great for the spooky season. The next one I have is also kind of gothic, and that is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I have this absolutely stunning Chiltern Classic edition. I don't know if it's like fully going to come on camera, and it has like these gold edges. I have heard fantastic things about The Picture of Dorian Gray. I believe that it follows this man who is obsessed with staying young and beautiful. So I don't know if he makes this kind of deal where there is this painting of him, and that is the thing that gets old, and all the ugliness of his character becomes part of that painting, so that painting gets uglier and uglier while he remains this young, beautiful man, and that just sounds amazing. I don't really need to know much more than that. I think that I'm also going to really love this one, and hopefully I can get to it very soon. And then another book that I got for Christmas was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This also includes Through the Looking Glass, which is the sequel. This is the beautiful Mina Lima edition. I showed you in my TBR, which I think went up before this, but it has these like interactive elements, for example like that one, and you can like move it down and the Cheshire Cat goes invisible. So it seems like it's going to be a very fun read. But this follows this young girl called Alice who falls through this rabbit hole and ends up in Wonderland, which is this nonsensical, magical, whimsical place. There's like an evil queen, there's loads of different characters throughout this, and I have never read Alice in Wonderland before, so I'm excited to give it a go. I think that this could be exactly my kind of book. Like, I do love something that doesn't make any sense, and I think that is basically what Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is. It's just this strange, weird story that is very fantastical, and I think that I'm really going to enjoy this one. And then the final classic on my list, this isn't the last classic that I want to read, but I thought that I would only put 4 on the 21 books list, but that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is the stunning Folio Society edition, and I have read Dracula before. I love vampires, and during my Twilight phase I ended up picking up Dracula, and I can't remember too much about whether I enjoyed it or not. I think maybe I was just a tad too young to fully appreciate it. This follows this man called Jonathan Harker who goes to Transylvania to sort out Count Dracula's affairs, and it turns out that Count Dracula is a vampire, and Jonathan gets dragged into that as well as his fiancée and their friends, and they're trying to defeat Dracula, they're trying to take him down. There's a vampire hunter called Van Helsing. I'm sure most people are familiar with the story of Dracula, but I'm hoping that I really enjoy this, and I love this edition. My grandparents bought this for me a few years ago, and I have wanted to pick it up ever since then and never did. I don't know whether I want to get my hopes up too high because I don't think I loved it the first time that I read it, but I'm hoping that now I'm older and wiser and I do appreciate classics more, that I will end up really loving this one. And yeah, that's another one that I definitely want to get to in 2021. The next goal that I have for 2021 is I also want to read more non-fiction, and again I would like to to get to at least 6. So I have 3 on my list, and the first one I have is Disfigured by Amanda Ludek. This is about disability and fairy tales and how there is a lot of ableist language in fairy tales. For example, villains, they tend to have scars, or they're described in a, like, they might have disabilities or something, and how negative that is, that we are read these fairy tales as kids, or we watch like a Disney film or something, and subconsciously that's going in. I'm not entirely sure if I'm explaining it very well, but I have heard fantastic things about this one, and I definitely want to be reading more books either featuring disabled characters in fiction or reading more non-fiction about disabilities in real life. And then I would also like to get to The 5 by Hallie Rubenhold. This one is quite different. This is about the 5 women that Jack the Ripper killed, and I really like this idea of giving women who have been forgotten or their names taken away, actually giving them their story. And again, I've heard fantastic things about this one. This one is very popular in Britain especially. I always see it around, and yeah, I thought it might be interesting. And then the final one on my list is Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. This is by a black author, and it's looking at feminism, it's looking at like popular culture and how a lot of feminism can be quite exclusionary, or what it means to be a feminist. And I've heard fantastic things. I've heard fantastic things about literally every book in this video. So yeah, it's another one that is high up on my priority list. Another of my goals in 2021 is to buy a maximum of 60 books. That was one of my goals from last year. That worked really well for me. I would also like to complete 8 of my monthly TBRs. I think I fell off the wagon a bit at the end of 2020 completing my Game of Books TBR, but there is a reason that I have picked that. It is to pick up the books on my shelves, to pick up books that I'm really excited about, and I definitely want to really focus on finishing those monthly TBRs, so I would like to complete at least 8. That does give me 4 months where I can just like lose it. So those are most of my reading goals. I do have a couple of Booktube related goals, but I will come to them at the end. But obviously I haven't talked about all of the 21 books that I want to read, so I will just show you them now. So the next book is Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I have heard fantastic things about this author, and they also have another book called Pet that I would really like to get to. That's not on my list, but that is one that I would love to get to soon. And I don't know too much about this book. I think it's following this woman who, because of some trauma, she's like split into different selves, like she has multiple selves. I don't really know. I'm sure I've heard from someone that it has God aspects. I might have just like made that up or mixed it up with another book, but I don't know too much. It's very short. I think that I could really enjoy this author from what I've heard about them, and yeah, I thought I'd put it on this list because it's a book that I have been incredibly excited to get to. Then we have Lovely War by Julie Berry. This is a historical fiction set in the First and the Second World War, and I think it's following the Greek goddess Aphrodite because she is on trial for having an affair with Ares, the god of war. So it's very much about how love and war are intertwined. Those two states are really closely linked, and how love is influenced by war, how war is influenced by love, stuff like that. And I love this cover. I've heard fantastic things. I've literally said that about every book in this video, but those are the reasons why I pick up books. If I hear great things about a book, I want to know if I'm going to love it too. I have been meaning to pick up some more historical fiction, and I think that this one is hopefully going to be a perfect one to pick up. Then we have The Gilda Stories by Joelle Gomez. This, all I know is I'm sure that this is just about like lesbian vampires. That sold me. I don't think you need to know any more than that. I love vampires, and I think it's quite a, what's it called, a defining book in a genre. Yes, so it says on the back that it was an instant lesbian classic when it was first published, and it talks a lot about blackness, family, and it also has the whole vampire story in it. Yeah, I think this is another one that I could end up really enjoying. Then we have The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is a fantasy, and I think it's been described as a middle grade for adults, so it's very whimsical, and it follows this man who works at this organisation that checks out care homes or something. But I think that he gets sent to this children's home where there are lots of children with dangerous powers, and I think one of them is the Antichrist. And you also have other kids with dangerous powers, and it just sounds like it's going to be very wholesome and very fun. I know that a lot of people were loving that book in 2020, so it is another one that I definitely wanted to get to in 2021. We also have Lament A by Darcy Littlebadger. This is a young adult fantasy, and I think it's set in this world where everyone can see ghosts. Like, ghosts are just a normal part of life, and that's all I know. I really don't know too much. I'm sorry that I'm not very good at describing these books, but I do tend to go into books either not knowing much or only knowing what other people have said, and I really can't remember too much, but the cover for this is stunning. I love a ghostly book as well, and it just seemed like something that I could end up really loving. And that's why it's on the list. Hello, voiceover Holly here. So I completely forgot to mention this one in the video, but I would also like to get to The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So that is a Chinese history inspired fantasy. I think the final book came out in 2020, so that's a series that has been like really popular on Booktube at the moment, and I think that I will love it. So that is also a book that I would love to get to in 2021. Now, the last 6 books on this list are not really 6 books, they are 6 authors that I would really like to try this year. So I don't necessarily have a specific book in mind with these authors. It's more that I would just like to read a book from them. And the first one is Matt Haig, and I do already own The Humans by him. And this follows this alien who gets sent to Earth, and he's kind of experiencing humanity from the outside. That's all I know. Science fiction. There's a dog and an alien, but I know that The Midnight Library came out in 2020 and that one was really loved, so I definitely want to try one of his books this year. I know that a lot of his books tend to focus on mental health, which is something that he has personally struggled with. I think that could be something that I relate to a lot, and this one is quite short, so this is probably the one that I will pick up first before I get to The Midnight Library. But I know that he has a lot of other books, How to Stop Time, he has a couple of non-fictions, and hopefully I can get to at least one of his books in 2021. I also have Haruki Murakami, and he has a lot of books. Some of the ones that interested me were Norwegian Wood, there's Kafka on the Shore, there's After Dark. There are tons and tons of books, and I think this author is very well known for doing books that are very strange and unexplained, and I think that I could really like that style of weird book. I know that a lot of people love this author. I would definitely like to try one of his books this year, and I don't know which one it's going to be. Whatever one I get to, I hopefully will really enjoy. We also have Frederick Backman. So I have read a book from this author before, and that was A Man Called Ove, or Ove. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but I loved A Man Called Ove, and I gave that one 5 stars, and ever since then I have wanted to pick up another book from this author, and I never did. And I've seen Beartown a lot over the past year. I must have seen it over 20 times, so I think that's the one that I'm gonna pick up. He has a lot of other books as well, which also interest me. But yeah, I've tried Frederick Backman in the past and I loved him, and I definitely would like to give another one of his books a go. Then we have Silvia Moreno Garcia, and the book that really popped to mind with this author was Mexican Gothic, but they also have Gods of Jade and Shadow and a lot of other books. Mexican Gothic was incredibly popular in 2020. I think it won the Goodreads Choice Awards, so a lot of people voted for that one. A lot of people loved it, and I think that I could really enjoy this author. I know that they have a wide selection of books. They do like fantasy, they do horror. She's also done a vampire book, so maybe I'll pick that one up. I just think the concepts of her books sound so interesting to me that she could definitely be an author that I end up really loving. Then we have Octavia Butler. Again, I've read a book from this author before. I read Fledgling, but I didn't particularly enjoy that one. I think I gave it 2 stars. It just didn't really work for me. But I know that a lot of her books like Kindred and Parable of the Sower are incredibly popular, and I think Kindred is probably the one that I will pick up. I know that this author is incredibly acclaimed, and I want to see the hype, because obviously I didn't like the one book that I read from her, but I'm hoping that I will love a book like Kindred or something else a lot more than I liked Fledgling, and that I could actually really enjoy this author. And then the final book on this 21 books that I want to read in 2021 is Sarah Gailey. This is another author who tends to write books in a lot of different genres. They've got Magic for Liars, which is a fantasy. There's Upright Women Wanted, which is this Western kind of dystopian thing. There's a book called River of Teeth, which I think is about, is it hippopotamuses or something? I don't know. But again, this author sounds like they could be an author for me, and their books seem to be very well loved, so I definitely want to try out some of their books in 2021. Now, I know this video has probably been going on a very long time, but I do have a couple of Booktube goals as well. My first one is that I would love to hit 1,000 subscribers. So numbers to me aren't too important. I am making videos for myself predominantly, and it's just like an added bonus if other people love them. But I think I've gone over 600 subscribers, which is just incredible to me. And 1,000 was like the goal that I had in mind when I first started a channel. I was like, if I get to 1,000, I'm happy. Like, that is like the peak. And if I could get to that in 2021, I would just be over the moon. If I don't, it's completely fine. I'm completely fine if I only stay at 600 forever. But 1,000, I'd really love it if I could. Yeah. Fingers crossed. I would also like to experiment more with my thumbnails and my editing. I don't think it's the best, and I would like to try a few more things. I would also like to be a bit more creative with some of my content. For example, making some more creative reading vlogs. I'd like to make either 1 to 2 a month, like really in-depth vlogs, and get better at talking through about my thoughts on books. And then finally, I would like to interact more with the community, commenting on videos, maybe doing a buddy read or two, actively participating in read-alongs or something. For example, I am casually taking part in Becca's Catch-Up Book Club with the Robin Hobb books, but I never go to any of the live shows or anything, and I would love to actually get more involved in these things that I'm taking part in rather than just being like a bystander. And yeah, I'd like to interact a lot more. If you would like to do a buddy read or something, I'm always up for that. I think those are all the goals. I think this video has been a bit longer than I anticipated, but if you have made it to the end, let me know what goals you've set for 2021, whether they're reading goals or just life goals. I do have a couple of life goals as well. And that's it. That's the video. I hope that you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and to everyone out there, stay curious. Bye!